accused of all kinds of things simply because he doesn't toe that liberal line. He stands for Christian conservative values.
To sum up, the mother is a woman, the father is a man, and leave our kids alone. Full stop, end of discussion.
A new conservative alliance, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
With regard to Ukraine, we have requested, publicly, privately, in every forum, answers to the critical questions. What is the end game and the strategy in Ukraine?
We want this place to work. We want to govern. That's what House Democrats want.
As your president, I promise you, I will get the job done, I will make no excuses, and I will not let you down.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Presidential campaigns need more than a candidate. They need resources, principally money and personnel. And if you want to understand the strategy of any given presidential campaign, watch where the money and the resources, particularly the personnel, are directed. We raise that because on this day, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has decided to move a majority of his campaign staff to South Carolina, deciding to do so less than a week from the New Hampshire primary. We will have more on that development in a moment. But first, we want to tell you about a meeting between President Biden and congressional leaders late this afternoon at the White House. All this about the fate of approving more foreign and military aid. The president is pushing for Congress to pass what he describes as a national security package, including funding for Ukraine, Israel, and border security. But Republicans, specifically House Republicans, are pushing for sweeping new immigration policy changes in exchange. On a bipartisan basis, Senate negotiators are working to strike a deal on that, but have not yet been successful. Let us bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian for the latest. Nicole, I know it's been a busy afternoon. Catch us up on where things stand.
Well, they stand kind of where they started in that, I don't know if this meeting particularly moved the needle, although congressional leaders, by and large, describe this meeting as productive. Let's take a listen to what Speaker Johnson and Leader Chuck Schumer both had to say after this White House meeting.
I told the president what I have been saying for many months, and that is that we must have change at the border, substantive policy change.
It was a very good meeting and a very positive meeting. There was a large amount of agreement around the table that we must do Ukraine and we must do border.
So again, both leaders from opposing sides sounding optimistic. But again, the question is whether the needle was moved at all with respect to this national security supplemental. After all, that is why President Biden called these congressional leaders and members to the White House to try to get the ball moving with respect to this $100 billion plus package that would help Ukraine, that would help Israel and the Hamas war in terms of assisting Israel, but also providing humanitarian assistance to Gaza. It would help the Indo-Pacific and also provide additional funding for border. But again, that border issue, as you heard from both leaders, continues to be the sticking point. Speaker Johnson continuing to make it clear that he believes any kind of deal needs to encompass part of this H.R. 2 package that House Republicans passed many months ago last year. Those are very strict policy changes that Republicans would like to see, although the Senate, including Leader Schumer, has made clear it's dead on arrival there. They're not going to go that far. So the question is whether or not any middle ground was reached in that White House meeting. And as of now, it seems that may not be the case.
So, Nicole, picking up on what the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said, talking about the broad agreement he perceived in that room about Ukraine aid, that would mean the president, he's in support, obviously. The Democratic leadership of the Senate and the House are supportive, as are their membership, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is supportive. So he's not inaccurate about that, but he sort of glossed over this great sticking point that you described, which is House Republicans and their persistent request for these changes in policy, not just dollars and cents along the border, and that's where all of this appears to hinge, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And there certainly appears to be additional progress with respect to some of the border negotiations that have been ongoing, mostly in the Senate, for well over a month now. So much so that, Leader McConnell suggested even that it was possible they could take the supplemental up as soon as next week, although Leader Schumer earlier told reporters he's not necessarily going to commit to a timeline. So that being said, while there does sound like there could be some progress on this front, again, you have Speaker Johnson drawing a pretty hard line in the sand. And even if some deal is reached or there was some type of consensus reached in this White House meeting, again, the critical issue becomes not what happens to this in the Senate, but what happens in the House, because many members, particularly on the far right side of the Republican conference, have made clear that they are not interested in approving any additional aid to Ukraine. And many are standing firm on moving forward with any type of HR2-like package. We heard from, for instance, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who told reporters today that if Speaker Johnson ends up supporting additional aid to Ukraine, she may invoke this motion to vacate, which was that same tool that we saw used to oust Speaker McCarthy last year. So there's a lot riding on this. And again, it will become a matter of whether any kind of deal ultimately will be palatable not only in the Senate, but here in the House.
Coming to us from Capitol Hill with the latest, Nicole Killian. We thank you. It's just Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis left chasing former President Trump for the Republican nomination. DeSantis may have finished second in Iowa, but he was still 30 points behind the former president. Joining me now, Texas Congressman Chip Roy. Congressman Roy is one of a handful of House Republicans to endorse Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Let me say in advance, this interview will be conducted due to the tender mercies of hotel internet connections, Manchester and New Hampshire. Congressman, good to see you. As a surrogate for Governor DeSantis, describe the current state of that campaign and perhaps argue against the perception that after Iowa it is in a severe state of distress.
Hey, Major, great to be on. And look, we're in Manchester. We woke up in Iowa, I think yesterday morning, if I have my days straight. Went down to Greenville, had a great event with, I think, almost 1,000 people in an airport hangar in Greenville that showed up with great enthusiasm. We've been to multiple locations now in New Hampshire. Had a great event just a little while ago. A lot of enthusiasm and a great event last night on Rival Network on CNN, and had a great town hall with a lot of folks there. And it was good. And look, there's a lot of enthusiasm. And look, let's remember, half of the people in Iowa chose somebody different than former President Trump. And in fact, with respect to former Governor Haley, 7,000 of the Democrats that voted, most of those went to Nikki Haley. So there's a large block of Republicans who chose Governor Ron DeSantis. We're making that message clear out here in New Hampshire, and we'll see. I mean, look, obviously President Trump won. Obviously there's a big block of support for him. But we think we've got a message that's resonating, somebody who can serve for 8 years, and that America deserves a choice. So we're going to keep marching ahead.
Congressman, it has been confirmed to CBS News that for the duration of time, basically from today until Tuesday's New Hampshire primary, Governor DeSantis will either be in Florida or South Carolina, suggesting he's moving his chips to South Carolina away from New Hampshire. Fair characterization?
Well, I mean, we're in New Hampshire right now. We've got another event in a couple of hours. Spent a lot of time the last 2 days here in New Hampshire. The governor is going to go home, I think, to Florida. I don't want to get too out in the weeds, but he see his family for a day. But he's got a lot of things on the books. I think they're still working on the schedule. I think South Carolina is definitely on the docket. And that doesn't mean that he won't come back to New Hampshire. They're kind of working through that. But a lot of support in New Hampshire, a lot of support in South Carolina. We'll see what happens. I mean, look, we're realistic about like what we recognize in Iowa. I mean, the governor went all in there, and he came in second place. Came in second place again with a whole lot of Democrats voting and $40 million spent against him. But again, half of the people who showed up to the polls didn't vote for President Trump. By the way, only 110,000 Republicans showed up in Iowa. We're trying to do something different and try to generate enthusiasm. We're doing that and trying to do it on the ground in South Carolina and New Hampshire. We believe the people deserve a choice, and we're going to keep moving forward.
Congressman, I know you don't speak for the Super PAC Never Back Down, but it has also been confirmed to CBS News that as of today, 15 staffers on that Super PAC have been let go. The entire Nevada team for Governor DeSantis let go. That will add to the perception of not only money problems, but momentum problems.
Well, look, I mean, I can't speak for the Super PAC. I know I've been doing events. I just did an event that was put on by Never Back Down. So, they're the ones that have to decide that. You know the drill in terms of coordination between entities. And so I'm not fully advised. But here's what I do know. Is that I believe in Governor DeSantis. I believe that Republicans should have somebody that they can put their full faith behind. I'm on the campaign trail because of my son, who's 14, and my daughter, who's 12. I want them to be able to look at the occupant in the Oval Office, put their full faith and belief in that individual, be proud of the President of the United States. I want somebody who can serve for 8 years and take this country forward. And I'm going to keep delivering that message to the American people. Look, I call balls and strikes. I criticize my Republican colleagues, Democrat colleagues equally. I'll criticize former President Trump, current President Biden. I'll criticize folks equally to defend the positions that I believe in. I think Governor Ron DeSantis is a great guy, and I'm happy to be running alongside him.
And Congressman, right now for Governor DeSantis, who is the principal opponent, Nikki Haley or former President Trump?
Well, I mean, he's trying to sell his message to the American people the direction he wants to go. I think Governor Haley, with all due respect, all she's done is diminish the likelihood of having a head-to-head battle of people who can win a Republican nomination with Republican voters. She's getting most of her support from Democrats, independents, and the moderates who will not pick the Republican nominee in this primary. That's the plain truth. She knows it, and that's unfortunate. She dumped $40 million into, well, combined, there was $40 million out. She dumped like $25 or $26 million into Iowa, $1 million in the last couple of days. She still finished third, and she did that knowing full well her support came from Democrats. So we'll see what happens in New Hampshire. She's not going to win her own home state in South Carolina. I think that tells you a lot. So we'll see what happens over here in the next couple of weeks.
Answer me this, if you could, Congressman. If Ron DeSantis, after finishing second and a distant second at Iowa, finishes third in New Hampshire and second in South Carolina, how is that a practical path forward to Super Tuesday?
Well, again, I know the governor's looking at all of this and trying to figure out how he's going to move forward. I think his message is resonating. And again, part of it's just working hard. And, as a country, we used to let this play out a little bit instead of the media coming in and making the decisions. I mean, look, it was a really early call in Iowa. I hadn't even spoken. I hadn't spoken at all at the caucus where President Trump, Nikki Haley showed up. Vivek was there. I didn't even get a chance to speak before they called it. I don't think that's right. The media wants to decide this stuff early. Literally, we had about 5% of Republicans in the 31st biggest state who have decided so far in Iowa where they landed, and half of them didn't choose President Trump. We're trying to make sure there's an option on the table. But again, to run campaigns, you got to have money. You got to be able to keep going, and we'll see what happens. And I know the folks are kind of looking at that for Governor DeSantis.
Congressman, you have a job in Washington also. It's a significant job. What can you tell us about your position about the looming continuing resolution and the Senate talks about immigration policy changes?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was, again, just meeting with a bunch of folks here in New Hampshire. It's not just my own constituents in Texas. I've been on the road in Iowa. None of them want a continuing resolution of the Nancy Pelosi spending levels that are continuing to bankrupt our country and continue to fund a government that is not doing its job, that's undermining our freedom, that's funding a UN that has money that goes to Gaza and goes to Hamas. Nobody wants that. That's out here in real America. So, of course, Republicans in Washington, swamp Republicans, will do exactly the same old, kick the can down the road and do another CR. And I think that's a mistake. But the worst part about it is it's a continuing resolution to fund at those levels, only to buy time to fund at higher levels. That's your Republican Party, the so-called fiscal conservatives. I disagree with it. I'm going to fight it and try to make sure that we do the right thing. But if the speaker is going to continue to move stuff by suspending the rules in kind of a coalition style to move big spending bills, well, that's his call. I don't think that's going to inspire Republicans very much. And, we'll see the supplemental bill. I mean, look, that thing that they're talking about in the Senate should be dead on arrival in the House. I do think the speaker has been right about that. We shouldn't be focusing on sending money over to Ukraine when we can't even secure our own border. The bill they're talking about, with all due respect to Senator Langford, it won't secure the border. It's got amnesty in it. It doesn't have the security measures that are needed to protect people in Texas. So I will not support that, and I hope the House Republicans won't either.
Very quickly, Congressman Roy, if that continuing resolution passes, will you sponsor any effort to get rid of Speaker Mike Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to get into all that kind of inside the Beltway drama. I mean, I will say we've got all the tools that are there for a reason. We need to hold Republicans accountable to do what they said they would do, increasing spending along the Nancy Pelosi levels and higher, and not securing the border of the United States. That's not getting the job done. And they're tired. The American people are tired of excuses. Frankly, that's why I support Governor DeSantis. He gets the job done. He's done it for the people of Florida. He'll do it for America. We just need more Americans to be able to see that message while the media is all in the tank for President Trump.
That's something I've never been accused of, Congressman Chip Roy. We thank you for your time. Safe travels in New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Take care, Major.
Checking the calendar, something I do periodically. We're 6 days out from the New Hampshire primary. Up next, how Republicans across the state are trying to reach those voters. You are streaming America Decides.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you
Do
learned?
you know why?
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 It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish
That
you and
we
I are going to
just-
have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
He was there when the war in Ukraine started.
Extreme history. It's a big moment.
The extraordinary story behind Sean Penn's new Paramount Plus documentary, Superpower, when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
Human remains found this week.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
How can we become our best selves? That may be more about character than talent.
The ultimate mark of your potential is how far you've climbed, not how high you've gone.
Realizing your true potential with Adam Grant as we go person to person.
Welcome back to America Decides. Speaking strictly politically, the nation has averted his gaze from Iowa and shifted it now to New Hampshire. So let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Jake Rosen, who joins us from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Jake, good to see you. So there have been a couple of developments in New Hampshire in the last couple of weeks. Chris Christie dropped out. That seems to create some sort of opportunities, possibly. And Vivek Ramaswamy has dropped out. Any sense that you have, based on your reporting, of what those two decisions to leave the race might affect the New Hampshire primary?
Well, frankly, Major, I think it only makes the battle between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump even more of a factor coming here. Like you said, next Tuesday is the state's primary. But Vivek Ramaswamy was on the stage with Donald Trump last night. He campaigned for him and gave a brief stump speech. The big thing here is whether Nikki Haley can convert those Chris Christie supporters, that 40% of the state's voting bloc that sways and is undeclared, and if she can get them in her corner. But the one factor I'll tell you, Major, is Ron DeSantis staying in this race, even if he is shifting his idea and his candidacy towards South Carolina and the resources down there. If people vote for him up here, that means that, Nikki Haley's lead is going to be, or Nikki Haley's opportunity is going to be cut into, and Donald Trump will once again potentially claim victory here come a week from yesterday.
Jake, I want to ask you about something the former president has said recently, which is that there's some way by which Nikki Haley is trying to infiltrate the primary in New Hampshire, even suggestions of busing out-of-state people to participate. Can you clarify what the rules are in New Hampshire and what is and is not permissible?
Right, so Donald Trump is incorrect on this, like you said, Major. The deadline for voters of any party in New Hampshire to switch their registration was in October, which means that Donald Trump is wrong when he says that Democrats can infiltrate the primary. They cannot. You can no longer switch your registration. You can register to vote in the state, but what Donald Trump may be getting at is that moderate plurality, 40% of New Hampshire, like I mentioned. If that plurality does vote for Haley, that's a threat to Donald Trump. So what he's trying to do is kind of cast doubt already on any kind of results that Nikki Haley gets in the state.
Jake Rosen from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Thanks so very much. Next, our political panel joins us to assess the current state of the Republican presidential field. You're streaming America Decides.
Hey there, welcome to the Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She's a country music legend, philanthropist, fashion icon, and now rock star.
I think there's a lot to be said about being comfortable with who you are.
Find out what's next for Dolly Parton when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She is a beloved American icon and head of a media empire. But is Oprah Winfrey happy? How do you define happiness?
Yeah, I call it happiness.
Find out when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
If you want a nominee who is endorsed by all the rhinos, globalists, and demented never-Trumpers, crooked Joe Biden's biggest donors, then Nikki Haley is your candidate. The Democrats are supporting her because she's easy to beat.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was former President Trump in New Hampshire claiming Nikki Haley is out of step with the Republican Party. Haley is sticking to her argument that the country, and more specifically, Republicans, are ready to move on from the former president. We're going to talk about that and many other topics with Joel Payne and Devin O'Malley joining us now. Joel is a CBS News political contributor, Democratic strategist, and chief communications officer for Move On. Devin served as the campaign spokesperson for Mike Pence's 2024 presidential campaign and on Glenn Youngkin's successful 2021 race for governor of Virginia. He's now the director for narrative strategies. Gentlemen, I want to play for you something that Ron DeSantis said last night, coming off of his distant second place in the Iowa caucuses. Let's quickly listen to that.
He's one of the most famous people that's ever been involved in American politics. And there's obviously a lot of Republicans that appreciated his policies, but you still had roughly half of the Iowa caucus goers that made another choice. And so that tells me that there is an appetite for a different leader.
Devin, we'd follow that under making the best of a rough situation. I would remind Governor DeSantis, though his math is correct, Donald Trump only won 24% of the Iowa caucuses in 2016. We bet 76% of the participating Republicans didn't vote for him. He got the nomination, became president of the United States. So getting half in Iowa is better than 24%. So, there is some history to be reminded of. What do you make of the Iowa caucuses and where DeSantis finds himself now?
Well, I think the governor of Florida is in a difficult situation, but he's not the only one in the race that's in a difficult situation. I was joking with Joel before we came out that maybe this is the last time we'll actually be talking about the Republican primary, because there is a sense of inevitability that is growing and growing with each day that passes by. And Governor DeSantis is skipping New Hampshire entirely. He's off to South Carolina. Governor Haley's home state. Governor Haley's in New Hampshire, trying to put some sort of pressure on President Trump. But even if she is able to get within a 10-point margin in New Hampshire, it's not quite clear what her path to victory in South Carolina is. So we've got this electorate. Yes, there's 50% of Republicans that are maybe open to a Trump alternative, but it's not quite clear who's going to be the person that can consolidate that, and none of the other candidates seem to be acquiescing to the other.
Joel, how does a Democrat look at Iowa, and what is it looking forward toward a New Hampshire primary?
I got to disagree with Devin. We need an extended primary. We need the President Trump, to labor over this nomination. I think what I see
to distract from the Biden administration's failures, I suppose.
I will be happy to talk about President Biden in a second, but I'll just tell you this. I think Democrats, what they see is actually very similar to what Ron DeSantis said there. It is somewhat remarkable that the standard bearer of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, did only register half of a low turnout, low energy Republican Iowa caucus. I don't know if that says that Donald Trump can't win. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I think it does say that maybe we should kind of cool our jets a bit on some of the Trump enthusiasm syndrome that maybe got a little bit over our skis. And I think we need to recognize that this is still a divided country, but maybe more important and maybe more concerning for Devin, I think it's still a divided Republican Party as well.
Joel, there's about a month between now, a little bit more than a month, and the State of the Union address. What does the President of the United States need to have accomplished by then to have a State of the Union that is in any way memorable?
Well, I think he's actually got a lot to say about what's happened over the last 3 years. Obviously, we're in a political season right now, and I think things are probably...
But recentism is a real thing right now. People want to know what you've just accomplished, and there's a lot on the table right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think he is obviously engaging in pretty forthright fashion with Speaker Johnson and with other congressional leaders to try to get past the financial impasse that we're looking at with the federal budget. I think the president and his team have started to talk about the things that they want to do, lowering prescription drug costs, building on some of the advances of the first 2 years of the administration. So you're going to see more of that. But the narrative that they're going to be teasing out is the split screen, the compare contrast. Do you want the chaos that you're seeing in the Republican Party and what Donald Trump gave you, or do you want the stability that we present? I think that's the case they're going to lay out.
We talk about the chaos of the Republican Party. Joel, that's politics, right? And a lot of that is theater. There is actual chaos going on in the country at the southern border, in large American cities, across the country. That's real chaos. Those are real concerns that Americans have. And not one of those things was in your list of priorities that the president needs to accomplish or even discuss in the State of the Union. That's what's on Americans' minds. That's the case that he needs to lay out in the next few weeks, and he's not able to. Those are real failures on his watch, and those are real challenges that the Biden administration.
Devin, to pick up on that point, do you think by the time of the State of the Union in early March, the Republican battle for the nomination will effectively be over and this immigration issue will be one of, if not the most aggressive charges against the Biden administration?
I do think. I mean, Major, I think it's effectively over right now, barring some real mitigating circumstances. But even then, I think it's effectively over. And I mean, I even think that that inevitability extends to the general election. I mean, we're seeing polls in Michigan, Minnesota, and Georgia that show Donald Trump the closest that he's really ever been to a Democratic challenger this far ahead of the general election. I mean, when you go back and you look at the results of 2020, I mean, there's something like 80,000 votes, across swing states that he needs to pick up. Like, there's a real challenge here that the Biden administration and the Biden campaign doesn't seem to want to acknowledge. I think that they're starting to feel the pressure, and they need to get to that point.
This will be a conversation we will have yet again. And Joel, you will get your full measure of time when we have a chance to reconvene.
It's their time on the griddle right now.
I appreciate it. Joel Payne and Devin O'Malley, thank you so very much. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides. That's good news tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot